The following lecture is going to be about some other basic commands and functions in the Unix Linux interface. And I'm going to show you some additional tools that we can use in the bash shell. So we're going to, again, continue our focus on how to use the shell, navigation, manipulation, all those kinds of things. And I'm going to introduce some ways that we can actually start to manipulate regular text and how we might use not only software commands but operator commands to do so. So one of the first things I'd like to do is just show you some practical skills in how to navigate within some of the directories that we downloaded the other day from the Shell Genomics database. How to rename some files, how to create some directories, how to make copies of files and change their names, and how to delete some files. However, before we start the exercises, let me show you some information to make sure that you have your directory set up correctly so that you can accomplish the rest of the exercises for the lesson appropriately. So in order to show you how to some of those exercises that we just discussed on the other page, I'm going to show you how to do it within the VirtualBox instance of Ubuntu that you should all have installed on your computer. In addition to the Shell Genomics data set, there's another data set that I'd like you guys to download. It's called Examples. It's on the island side. So if you could download Examples, it's a much smaller file. It should download pretty quickly. I'm going to save that. And if we pull up, go into our downloads directory, right, we can see there's Examples. I'm going to move it into that sandbox that we built yesterday. And then I'm going to go to that sandbox, change directory there. I don't have that Shell Genomics database either, so I'm going to download that directory. So now that I've downloaded the Shell Genomics database, I'm going to move that database over to this directory as well. Notice here I use this tilde. That tilde right there is a shortcut for my home directory. So the other thing is if I just type cd and hit it with no address or no location, notice that where I'm at right now is in this tilde. And where that tilde is, that is my home directory, my user's home directory. So /home/practical. So if I am in anywhere else in my computer, my file system, and I want to access something in my home directory, I can use that tilde as a shortcut to basically mean /home/practical to then access something and move it. And if I wanted to move to the directory that I'm in, I can use a dot. And a dot basically means this directory that I'm in right now. So the directory I'm in right now is sf_sand_box. Oops, it's not letting me move it because I have to identify the file. So now I have two different directories in I have two different data sets in this directory. I'm going to make an additional directory. I'm just going to call this data sets. And I'm going to move examples into data sets, and I'm going to move Shell Genomics into data sets. Once they're in there, I'm going to unpack both of them. You'll notice that shell genomics is a zip file, so I'm going to use the unzip command to unpack it. And notice that it's extracting all the files. Now I've got the shell genomics directory. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to unpack the examples directory. Now, the examples directory is not a zipped directory. It is a tarred gzipped directory. So what you would notice a lot in Unix environments is that they often use tar to and gzip to compress files. So to uncompress them, I'm going to say tar, and then I'm going to give it some arguments. I'm going to say z, meaning that the file that I'm trying to unpack is a gzipped file. I'm going to give it an x, which says that if there's an executable in it, I want it to be decompressed as a executable file. I'm going to give it a v to make it verbose. So it's going to report some information just like we see above. It's going to tell me what's happening. And I'm going to give it an f that's just going to force it to unpack no matter what. So if I do that, notice it reports some information because I told it to be verbose. And now if I look, I can see that there are two different directories. Now, you don't want to keep two copies of anything, so as long as I know like this isn't my only copy of my data, I'm just going to delete it. And to delete things from Unix, use a command called rm. Now, I'm just going to tell you right now, you got to be a little bit careful with rm, because rm, when you use it, it deletes everything. So be a little bit careful with rm. But just to be clear, if I wanted to actually delete this directory, notice if I do rm, nothing, it says I can't remove it because it's a directory. I actually have to force it to remove it, and I have to give it an R to tell it to be recursive. So it's going to delete everything, all the directories within those directories. It's going to be recursive, and it's going to force it. And if I do that, then I can delete examples. Now there's no trash can. There's no bringing this thing back once you delete it. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to hit the up arrow a couple times. I'm going to rerun that tar command just because I want to make sure that I have that here. Now I'm going to remove these compressed files to remove the space that they're taking up in my computer. I don't need to have copies of them. Now we see that I've just got two different directories. So take this opportunity to complete these 5 exercises. Do your best to complete them, and I'll provide an answer after this. All right, so if we go back to what we're being asked to do, the first thing we're going to do is to navigate to the MySeq directory, and then we're going to rename stability files as stability files _ important. So within the shell genomics database, right, we're going to go into the MySeq directory. And there we can find if I list, I can see the stability files right? And I want to rename it. And again, remember to rename files, we use the mv command, stability files, and I'm going to rename it. I'm going to move it into a new directory a new file called stability files important. So this is how I rename something. Okay. So now if I make that command, I type ls, notice that that file now has changed its name. Not made a copy of it, I've just changed its name. The next thing I want to do is create a directory in MySeq called new. And to do this, I'm going to use a command called mkdir, make new directory. It's going to say make new directory new. Now if I type ls, we'll see that I've created a new directory. Notice that the files, Depending upon how you set up your bash shell, it'll color code things differently. It might look differently in different people's computers. But in this setup, you see that all the files are green and all the directories are blue. Next thing I'm going to do is copy the stabilities important file into the new directory and call it stability files. So to do that, I'm going to copy stability files important. I'm going to put it into the new directory, and I'm going to name it a new name, stability files. Once I do that, if I look in the new directory, if I list what's in there, you'll see that stability files is in there. Last thing that I was asked to do was to remove the new directory. And to do that, I'm going to have to use that rm rf command and remove that new directory. Now if I type ls, you'll see that that directory is gone.